What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Fins Faithful podcast. We're back again, short week, so there's no rest here. The Dolphins obviously have a Thursday night game at Buffalo, and as we do every week, we're going to take you guys across our opponent's sideline. You know the national media, what they're saying this week, but what's the truth coming straight from Buffalo on Across the Sidelines? We've got Bills writer from Syracuse.com, and also he does the co-host of the podcast, Shout, a Buffalo Bills podcast. That is Ryan Talbot joining us in the chair this evening. And he's about to drop some takes that Dolphin fans need to hear before the kickoff. There's nobody more plugged in Buffalo than him. So let's just dive into this thing. Of course, we're live with you guys on YouTube. Make sure you drop those likes, subscribe, share the broadcast with your friends, all that good stuff. Comment, help support the channel. Of course, I'm always joined by my co-host and co-pilot, Jason Arnie. Ryan, welcome, man. Thanks for spending some time with us this evening.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely no problem, Ryan. The great news is we got a very plugged-in opponent reporter. The bad news is the opponents of the Buffalo Bills going into week 3. The 0-2 Dolphins go up against the 2-0 Bills. They
Couldn't be more opposite feelings right now.
Polar opposite franchises. But I'll tell you, is the blood in the water over there in Lake Erie in Western New York right now? Do the Bills smell something cooking? What's their perspective heading into this Dolphins Thursday night matchup?
They're saying all the right things, a lot of respect for the Dolphins. And while the Bills have had a really good record against Miami and Josh Allen's tenure, a lot of these games have been very close, down to the wire, one-score type of possessions. So I don't think they're overlooking Miami. Now, I know Miami fans, I know quite a few. They're not looking forward to this game because of how the first 2 weeks have worked out for them. I still think that, Miami has a very good offense. There's certainly some questions about this defense. And the way that Josh Allen and this offense has looked the first few weeks, I could see some potential problems arise for Miami.
All right. Well, the job of Mike McDaniel will be to focus in on those potentials and maximize it for the Dolphins. What do you see from an outsider from the Dolphins with the Mike McDaniel situation?
I don't feel like they're balanced enough on the offensive side of the ball, first and foremost. I don't think the backs are getting the type of workload that they need. That takes a lot of stress off of Tua and the receiving game. Obviously, with the Colts game, that was more of a matter of they couldn't utilize the run. They found themselves in a hole pretty early in that game. This last game was more of a shootout against New England. I feel like when you have a good 1-2 punch, I feel like they would have had a great 1-3 punch had Jalen Wright not suffered an injury. I feel like you have to get them more involved. And the Bills, obviously, week 1 had some troubles against the run game. Not every running back is Derrick Henry, mind you. But that's an area where I feel like Mike McDaniel has to kind of settle in and utilize the run a little bit on Thursday Night Football against the Bills, where across the other way, you have Josh Allen that's probably licking his chops, looking at that secondary in Miami, the struggles that they have there, and probably sees an opportunity to really have a great game. So that's the first thing on Miami's side. They're going to need some more out of their front, their front to get pressure on Allen. Allen obviously is still elusive, but if I'm Mike McDaniel, the first thing is establishing the run. I feel like that's going to play a big role early on in this game and trying to settle Miami in.
Yeah. You mentioned the run game. I mean, like you said, they faced two. To be fair to Buffalo, they faced 2 running quarterbacks, and obviously Lamar Jackson Fields, who left the game with a concussion, I believe, and Derrick Henry. Is that the weakness there? I mean, you made a great point. I mean, I covered this team and I couldn't say it better. That the Dolphins are actually first in yards per attempt, but way dead last in running the ball. Is that the weakness there of Buffalo's defense? Because it seems like, is it too early kind of to tell?
Yeah, it's a little too early to tell because they did do a great job against Breece Hall last week. Justin Fields was able to break out a little bit. But Tua's not the type of quarterback like Lamar and Fields where he's going to take off and use his legs as much. So that presents a few less challenges in that area. But, yeah, I feel like a few years ago, I know every year is different. A few years ago, Miami had a great game running the ball against Buffalo, and they kind of went away from it late in the game in a close game, and that kind of cost Miami. In this game, get them going. Let Achane run the ball. I think another weakness that the Bills have had typically over the last few years is the screen game, and that's another area where with a back that versatile, he could hurt them. And get the ball out quickly, because Buffalo is getting some good pressure with their front four for the first time in quite a while, with Joey Bosa and Rousseau. Epinesa has had a nice start to the year. On the interior, they're not going to most likely have Ed Oliver in this game, but there's been some flashes from TJ Sanders. So they have some guys up front that are doing a nice job. So get the ball out quickly. And the Bills have not had a great history, at least early on in games, with covering screens. They've given up a lot of yards.
Yeah, and speaking, you mentioned real quick the injuries. How are they looking? Obviously, we'll talk about Josh in a second, but Oliver and Milano, they're questionable, right? What is your sense, your gut tell you if these guys are going? It's a short week.
Yeah, no official designations yet, but I would be shocked if either played. Oliver was stepped on at practice last Wednesday. Then he was seen on a scooter and in kind of like a boot. The boot, he's no longer on the scooter, but I just think this is too short of a turnaround to have him play in this game. Milano, some kind of pec injury. They still haven't given us any kind of, intel on how serious it is. But Joey Bosa, meeting with the media today, kind of said, he doesn't know who's going to be that person that replaces both of those guys, kind of indicating that neither are going to play. While that's good news for Miami, I will say Taron Johnson says he's ready to go. One of the best nickel cornerbacks in the way that Miami can use, a lot of weapons in the slot. That's good news for the Bills.
Yeah, and Allen with the nose. I mean, that was kind of the aura of Allen just made him more of the Superman hero kind of Iron Man guy. I mean, it broke his nose, popped back in, gushing blood. He's fine this Thursday, right?
Yep. Good to go. He says he can breathe out of it just fine. He plans to wear a visor, which will be interesting. He said he wore a visor at Wyoming, but this will be the first time in an NFL game that he's ever worn a visor. It's a little bit hotter, he says. Luckily, this game's not in Miami, because that could really affect him with the heat there with the visor on. We'll see how it goes. There's some bruising there, still some swelling, but like you said, kind of this Iron Man. He never pulls himself out of games, but he was just like blood was just coming out of the nose. He had to. Kudos to Mitch Trubisky to come in and deliver a strike on 3rd and long to Joshua Palmer with Sauce Gardner in coverage, mind you. It was the last thing I was expecting on that drive. I figured safe handoff, punt, and live to see the next drive. But, Joe Brady played an aggressive brand of style of football there, and it worked out for the Bills.
Yeah, real quick. You mentioned the weather. What's it like there? I heard, 68? Pretty good.
We're actually having a little bit of a heat wave here for September in Western New York. We hit high 70s, low 80s. So I think on Thursday night you're probably talking low 70s, and by the time Thursday night football kicks off, probably high 60s. Which again, good weather for this time of year. We're not used to necessarily having 80s throughout the week, and then by nighttime having it so nice.
Speaking of Allen, he's obviously up to another great start, an MVP year last year. Does he take these Dolphins matchups personally? Does he rise to another level? What's his short week, mind you, going into this Dolphins matchup?
I felt like when Christian Wilkins was there in Miami, there was like that. Those two guys always got into it.
To say the least.
Yeah, wow. So maybe he got up for him more in that time. I know Wilkins isn't there anymore. He has a ton of respect, though. He had a ton of respect for Wilkins as well. But for a lot of the guys on that defense, he's very complimentary. Going to see an old friend, Rasul Douglas, out there on Thursday night as well. So he knows what this unit can do, what they're capable of. I think he was very impressed with Chop Robinson last year. Jalen Phillips, when healthy, is outstanding. It's just been bad luck with injuries for him. Good guys on the interior as well. So he knows that the talent is there. But yeah, I do feel like because of the Wilkins, he did kind of get up a little bit more for those games, because you knew there was going to be some trash talking, getting in each other's faces, some pushing and shoving. Not sure necessarily that it's going to have that same effect on him on Thursday night now.
Yeah, shout out to 3-0. There's Ash. We talked about you, Ash, backstage. Yes. How you doing? Nigel, thank you. Just found us Godspeed from Northern Ireland. Shout out. Thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. Everybody share the broadcast. Get everybody over here on YouTube. We got Ryan Talbot, Buffalo Bills writer for Syracuse.com, giving us the inside going across the sidelines here, giving us the inside scoop here from Buffalo. What's their perspective on the Miami Dolphins? You talked about respect. Tua mentioned today in his press conference how much he respects Josh Allen. Is it mutual? I mean, I think Allen has a high respect for Tua, right, and what he's been through.
Oh, absolutely. He's always like the first player that he looks for after games are over. Even the game that Miami defeated the Bills a few years ago in the heat, they had a nice embrace right after the game was over. Tons of mutual respect there. He cares about him as an individual. Always has said, great things and nice things about him, especially after like some injuries. Hope he's doing well. It's a competitive sport, excuse me. But at the end of the day, a lot of these guys do have friendships with one another, and it seems that way with Allen and Tua.
Yeah, I agree. They both, from what I remember, they both really always after the game they talk and mutual respect there. Tua spoke highly of them today. All right, everything on paper, right? This seems like it favors the Buffalo Bills. Is there any worry in Buffalo this could be a trap game for them? I mean, the Dolphins do still have weapons, like you mentioned. They have water. It's nothing to write home about. Is there a feeling? Is there a talk down there? You guys say, hey, let's hold our horses here. I know it's the Dolphins and everybody's down on them. Could this be a trap game?
I mean, I don't even know if I would go and call it a trap game. It's just a divisional game. Divisional games are always tough. I know that the Bills just defeated the Jets 30-10, but the Bills really had to grind out some of those drives early on, and the Jets shot themselves in the foot with some bad penalties in that game. So they made it very tough, and these opponents all know each other so well that I won't go and say this is a trap game for Buffalo, but the Bills have to be on their best because they are without Ed Oliver, their best defensive tackle. They are going to be without Matt Milano, who I wouldn't say is their best linebacker anymore, but for many, many years he was. Terrell Bernard is the best linebacker on this team now, but that's a communication standpoint where you're going to have Dorian Williams, who great athlete, not necessarily the best in coverage though. So those are areas that the Dolphins could easily exploit. And you mentioned it, the weapons are there. Mike McDaniel has said it after the last two games, there have been opportunities to spend an execution standpoint for Miami. So if they execute, there's going to be yards to be had there in this matchup. So Buffalo can't overlook them. Thursday night football is always just weird. Lack of preparation, lack of I hate Thursday night football personally. I've been on record for years saying that I hate it for the players. I don't like it for the turnaround preparation aspect of it. It usually leads to a lot of sloppy games. But we'll see where it goes on Thursday night. It does give Miami, though, a viable shot. I feel like if you had a full week to prepare, that probably would lean a little bit more in Buffalo's favor. But now on this short rest, it certainly lets the Dolphins maybe try to throw a few surprises Buffalo's way.
Ryan, I fully share your sentiment on the Thursday night scheduling situation, but we're in agreement there. And we're also in agreement on the trouble of the Miami Dolphins defense, most specifically the secondary. So pinpointing the Buffalo Bills receiving unit, namely Keon Coleman. He had a very good first week, came down a little bit week 3, but that game was, pretty much out of hand, whatever. What are your thoughts on Coleman on the receiving court to begin with?
Yeah, Coleman had an unbelievable summer. Looked night and day different from the player that Buffalo drafted. And, he's never going to be a big separator. He can still win off the line and do some things, but he's just not a burner. That's not part of his game. 50-50 balls, though. He's catching just about everything. He knows how to use his body. He was called for an offensive pass interference against the Jets where he extended the arm when he really didn't have to in that situation. So Josh Allen trusts him. They really worked on their rapport. Coleman was more vocal this offseason where if Allen put a ball where he didn't like it, he'd go back and say, that's not where I want it. I need it here. And they really worked that out. So he's going to be someone to watch in this matchup. I do feel for the Dolphins in that secondary. They kind of came in this offseason, this summer, and it looked a little weak on paper. Then they lose Kader Kohu, who is, in my opinion, their best cornerback. And now Storm Duck is out, and it's kind of like this patchwork job. And Coleman's going to have some opportunities. Joshua Palmer's going to have some opportunities. He's been used in that intermediate deep part of the field, so look for him to be involved as well. The tight ends are all kind of clicking from the blocking perspective right now. I know they want to get more involved as well as pass catchers. So a lot of guys to watch. And Khalil Shakir's been a little quiet. Mind you, he was kind of working his way back from a high ankle sprain that he suffered late in the summer. But we know that's been Josh Allen's favorite weapon over the last few years. So I think there's going to be I don't want to say the Bills are going to be pass heavy because I think they can run as well very effectively as James Cook has been one of the best backs through 2 weeks. So I just think that Allen, though, is going to look for those matchups when the time is right.
Real quick follow-up on Coleman. I get a kick out of him. I think he's a very funny, personable player. Are there any fun Coleman-isms or stories that, you could share with us? I mean, very funny guy.
He definitely is, but he's been more buttoned up in year two. And I was talking to someone close to him about it, especially with the Bills having Hard Knocks this summer at training camp. He really wasn't featured at all. He was barely seen. And I asked someone close to him about it, and they said, yeah, that's kind of more by design. He wanted to be more serious the second year. Not that he wasn't serious in year one, but everyone remembers the whole jacket conversation from Macy, the yellow jacket, and all that stuff. So I think that he really did zero in and focus on weaknesses in his game this offseason. He wants to let his game do the talking, which I respect that. But yeah, he's been a little quiet. Every now and then you'll see him doing at signings. He'll talk with the fans, and his interactions are pretty funny. But all business on the football field this summer and so far this season.
Yeah, I remember. We do a ton of draft work on here. I was a big fan of Coleman coming out. Actually, when you guys took him, I know everybody made a big deal about the Worthy trading back, and I'm a big fan. He's kind of got a little Devontae Parker to his game. Kind of that physical 50-50 ball, tough as nails. Kind of player. But I'm a fan.
Yeah.
Likewise.
And, Xavier Worthy, there's so much talk about that, and especially because the Bills talked all that offseason about needing to add speed. He didn't really fit, though, in terms of what the offense looks for from their receivers. They need guys that can block, and no knock on Worthy, but he's a very light receiver. Blocking is not ever going to be part of his game, and, he showed as a rookie that you can utilize him as a weapon in Kansas City without having to have him block. It just wasn't necessarily the best fit in Buffalo. I know Worthy, though, holds kind of a little bit of a vendetta and a chip on his shoulder about that. He was even talking about it this year before the shoulder injury in week one.
Yeah. And speaking of Cook, I think, not just fantasy owners, but I think he's a big key. They're trying to establish, they're trying to get over the hump. They're trying to establish that identity in the running game. Have you seen Cook take another level here? Kind of what has he worked on this offseason? He had a big game week one or last week versus the Jets. How big of a key here is James Cook to this whole thing?
No, massive. I mean, he was the best weapon not named Josh Allen last season from a touchdown perspective, but also from a big play perspective. And, Buffalo hasn't utilized him as much this year as a passer just yet, but he's great catching the ball out of the backfield, can hurt teams that way. But running the ball, the vision, the burst, he's worked a little bit on his physicality too, because early in his career, he was viewed more so as a change of pace back. The Bills had Devin Singletary. They weren't using him near the goal line. Then he kind of started to show, I know he's not the biggest back, but you give me the ball near the goal line, I can get it. I can punch it into the end zone. And he's done that a few times already this season. So physicality, he's shown that. You saw against the Jets, the ability to kind of juke and then kick into that extra gear where looked like he was going to get a short gain, but after the juke, there was no one on the right side of the field, and he took it to the house for a touchdown. So he is a massive weapon for this team, and he's going to play a big role on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah. And the Dolphins here, another matchup here. The Dolphins' offensive line's a mess. They have two starters out on the right side. How's the Bills' pass rush look? You got the local kid here from Rousseau. You said Oliver's going to be out. Who fills in his spot? And how's Bosa? Bosa's a guy the Dolphins were interested in this offseason. How's all that looking for the Bills there in their front four?
Yeah, Bosa's been dominant. And obviously the big talk on him has been health. But 7 pressures last week against the Jets. And, he went against Membu, the rookie there. And Membu had a really good first week against TJ Watt and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Bosa kind of put him in a blender, just was beating him left and right. And again, against 2 mobile quarterbacks, no offense to Tua, but he's not the most mobile guy. So that makes you a little bit nervous if you're a Dolphins fan, the way Bosa has looked early on here. TJ Sanders is going to get a lot of the reps in place of Ed Oliver, a very athletic defensive tackle, very similar to maybe not being the ideal weight that you think of it as a defensive tackle, but moves extremely well, can get pressure. He had a great pressure in the week 2 game that led to a sack that was split with Zion Logue, and I'm forgetting who's split it with him, but he's shown some burst there. You have Deion Walker, who's a very big defensive tackle out of Kentucky. That the funniest thing about him is the way he moves. They kind of called him I can't remember the exact terminology, but the ballerina feet essentially on the body of a really big animal, I guess is what essentially. But 345, and he's right now I would say he's better as a pass rusher than he is against the run, which you wouldn't necessarily expect. So he's going to be factor in. And on the other side, Greg Rousseau has looked good. He's great at setting the edge, also getting after the QB with his size, with his wingspan. He can also bat balls down. And AJ Epinesa too is off to a really nice start.
Man, Jason, were you laughing about Deion Walker, our story?
Looking at go ahead.
Yeah,
I was, yeah.
Funny story. I don't know if I should say this.
That got me going a little bit.
But I'm telling you, we go over about 140 prospects in the show. I was watching the combine. Go, his legs are so. It bothers me how skinny his legs are. I don't know. Is there something that stands out to you guys? It's just something that caught me off guard. I look at that stuff and it's just funny. No disrespect to Deion, but it was something that just came up because I know Jason and I joked about that.
Maybe I've never noticed it just because when he's standing up, he's just so massive compared to most all the other guys. They did bring back Jordan Phillips on the practice squad, who's very similar in the size perspective. But no, I never noticed that. I didn't notice Max Hairston. Cornerback, mind you, and he's on the IR now. He has very skinny legs. Even Trey White was kind of making fun of him about it on Hard Knocks before the injury took place about the size of the legs. So that was one rookie I noticed. Not to take over here, but I noticed in the chat someone asked about Landon Jackson.
Oh yeah.
He's been inactive the first 2 weeks. I like what I saw over the course of the summer. He did progress. He needs to work on his pass rush arsenal. I think he used his size to his advantage in college, which, obviously that can work pretty well there, but he needs to add a little bit to the repertoire. I'm not expecting him to be active unless there's an injury as the season goes on. So this might end up being more of like a redshirt season, but the Bills liked him enough to take him on day 2 of the draft.
Real quick on Landon Jackson, I keep going back to the draft stuff. I remember scouting him and saying he's like a railroad track player. He's good like on a railroad track. If that makes sense to you. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that? Like in a straight line going from A to B, he's good. But when it's left to right, I don't know if that's come true in camp in the NFL with the Bills.
No, I agree with that, and that's a part of it. It's a learning curve. I mean, I saw a tape of him from when he first started playing the position in college and using the bags and how bad he was at kind of getting around the bags and hitting the bags to where he was at the Senior Bowl and the way he moved. So there's been a lot of growth there, but there's still a lot of room for improvement too.
Kind of a two-part question here. Throughout the AFC East and the history of these two teams, the Dolphins have had their domination. The Bills have had their domination. I mentioned to you, I spent 4 years in Buffalo. I went to SUNY Buffalo. It was the 1999 to 2002 seasons. The teams were split right down the middle, But I remember no matter what it was in the season, if the Bills could get that win against the Dolphins, it was the closest thing to a playoff or Super Bowl kind of win just from that rivalry standpoint. So talk to me a little bit about that, how that community really riles themselves up for a Dolphins matchup. And then please follow up with your honest opinion. Is this the year for the Buffalo Bills?
Oof. Well, in terms of the rivalry, mind you, I was born in the mid 80s, so I remember Brian Cox very well and the hatred there between the Bills and Cox. And obviously there was the periods before I was alive with the Dolphins just dominating the series. So for people in Buffalo, Miami is that number one enemy within the division. I know the Patriots obviously had their heyday here with Tom Brady, but there's a lot of that rivalry that has gone on. And you're right, every year, whether the Bills were in that playoff drought or not, if you could spoil Miami's season or get those wins against them, that made it all worth it. And there were some pretty bad quarterbacks for the Bills that went through and were able to surprise and win some games in those matchups over the years that, made fans smile. But it's one of those things now where obviously with Josh Allen, things are looking up, and that kind of transitions to the second question. You never know if it's going to be the year, but through 2 weeks, things are setting up nicely with the Bills being 2-0, the Chiefs being 0-2. I think the Chiefs division is a lot tougher this year with the way, obviously, you saw the Chargers already knock them off. The Raiders didn't look good last night, but I do think that Pete Carroll will have them up for those games. The Broncos, That defense is legit. Bo Nix took a nice step over the course of his rookie year. I like the way he looked in week 2. So that's going to make it more complicated there. I think the biggest threat to the Bills in the AFC is the Ravens for that 1 seed. And obviously they have that head-to-head win that helps them out quite a bit. But with Joe Burrow being put on the IR and being expected to miss most of the rest of the season, that's going to make Baltimore's life a little bit easier in division. So I could see those two teams really being neck and neck all year. If the Bills can get the 1 seed in their final season at Highmark Stadium, I could see them running the table in the AFC, making it to the Super Bowl. Now, who they meet there could be some teams that pose problems. The Eagles look as good as ever. Green Bay's looking great through 2 weeks. So it would be interesting, but there's definitely in the mix for this to be the year for Buffalo.
Really quick personal follow-up. Back in 1999, I went to my first ever Miami Dolphins game in November. Randomly got a ticket from a Bills fan. He took me to the game. Dan Marino was questionable. I ended up not seeing him. I got a Damon Heward special. You guys came out with the victory. But I will say, tailgating, hanging out on the lawns, people opening up their houses, on their driveways, and really treating Dolphin fans very well until the game started. But it was an awesome experience. Just wasn't a very good game experience, but I will always have fond memories of checking out. I saw 2 or 3 Buffalo Bills games there. And Dolphins games. It was a lot of fun. Yeah,
Bills fans are very courteous, and it doesn't matter who's in town for the game. They'll welcome you into the tailgate for some great food, plenty of adult beverages, some tables to be broken, I'm sure. They are great about that. And obviously every fan base, there's a few bad apples that in game or before a game might take things too far. But for the most part, this fan base is unbelievable with opposing fans. They're courteous. Obviously, being on the winning side of things, not just against the Dolphins, but just in general, the way that this team has transformed under Josh Allen, Sean McDermott, that certainly helps. Maybe during the drought years, they're a little bit crankier, but they're pretty good nowadays with all fans and welcoming.
Yeah. Jason, I hope you didn't get any fights over there, Jason, did you?
No, but I looked like a hot dog when I left the stadium with some relish, mustard, and ketchup in my Marino jersey. It was probably the wrong jersey.
Not a food fight, not a fist fight.
No, just we had good seats down in the bowl, and it was like, 26-3 game or something. So we obviously wanted to beat the traffic. And like I said, I looked like a Chicago-style hot dog.
We got a couple of questions from the chat. Lou from Dade. Prater looks good. When is Bass due back?
Honestly, we don't know. He was dealing with pelvic soreness all summer long, and it kept him out of the first 2 preseason games. The Bills said he was going to be ready to go for the final preseason game, which he was. But then there was some kind of setback, soreness, injury that the Bills felt like they had to put him on the IR. So they'll track that. Right now, Prater has been great through 2 weeks. Showed that he still has some leg to his game with a 52-yarder against the Jets. But that is one area where Bass does give the Bills an advantage in some games where, unfortunately, not to bring up last season for you guys, the 61-yarder late in the game to win that game for Buffalo. So he does have more of the big leg. He's a little bit more inaccurate, though. There's some highs and lows that you read out with Tyler Bass. So not quite sure when he's going to be due back, but Sean McDermott has gone on record saying, he's still one of our guys. When he's back, we'll embrace him. We'll bring him back. And then I'm sure Prater would go right to the practice squad when that comes.
Yeah. Shout out to everybody in the chat. We got Ryan Talbot here, Bills writer for Syracuse.com, joining us, breaking it all down, getting the perspective in this big Thursday night matchup with the Buffalo Bills versus the Dolphins. If you're watching anywhere else, guys, come on YouTube, share it with your friends, get everybody in the chat here, ask your questions for Ryan. I got a quick question. Lou has another question, and I'll get to mine. Ryan, meant to ask you when you were on with us, but your all-time favorite Bill, white or red helmet? It took me a while to get to it.
So growing up, my favorite Bills were Darryl Talley. He wore those Spider-Man sleeves growing up. I loved watching him play at the linebacker position. Thurman Thomas and Steve Tasker. So I had 3 guys from that Super Bowl team. All 3 phases of the game. Tasker was just a joy to watch on special teams. Should be in the Hall of Fame.
Now you're speaking my language.
Those are my guys there.
Teams gunners and aces over there.
Yeah, unbelievable. Won a Pro Bowl MVP for a blocked, in a return that was taken back in the AFC. So just a special player, and all 3 of those guys were. I love the red helmets. I'm glad they're bringing it back.
I love the red.
Wish it was for more than one game. I wish there had been a few for this season, but I don't mind the white helmets either.
Yeah, I'll say this. I shouldn't be saying this. The rivalry, I love that ice rivalry. I like the Dolphin ones too. It kind of matches our logo here, but I love that all white rivalry. What do you think of those?
Yeah, so when I first saw, I didn't see all the details on it, and I was like, it's all right. And obviously the gray on it is a little bit to like the Bills' original jerseys back in like the 1960s when Ralph Wilson, purchased the team. The Lions were his favorite team, so he kind of had a little bit of that color scheme. But then when you see the details on the shoulders and everything else, it is a very cool looking jersey. So it was one of those things where I had to see it up close to kind of really appreciate it.
Yeah, and you mentioned the 61-yard field goal. You know what, Ryan? There's been so many things that happened after that. We don't even remember. That's how bad it's been.
That's fair.
That's like in our. I didn't even remember that until you brought it up. All right, let's talk about the secondary for the Bills. I want to go back to the defense because I know overall they wanted to get younger and quicker on defense, right? Especially in the corner, the safety position. That's why Cole Bishop is the guy. You got the number one in pass defense early. You've always been good in pass defense. You brought back Tre'Davious White. Secondary, have they accomplished that, especially at the safety position?
Yeah, so safety position first. There's been some highs and lows with Cole Bishop, and Bishop has had some bad luck in training camp his first 2 seasons with injuries. Last year, it really prevented him from having any shot of starting early in the year. Obviously, late in the year, he did finally get some experience in that role. This summer, too, though, missed significant time. But the Bills are pretty determined to make him the starter this season. And, there's been some good play in the preseason, some bad play out of place, some missed tackles. But they like the athleticism and the lack of experience. This is what what you expect to see. I think a lot of Bills fans have short patience with him, and even Taylor Rapp to a certain extent, because Rapp can be overly physical. He's hurt some of his own players in his time in Buffalo, where he's friendly fire, trying to go for the opponent, misses them, hits his own guys. So, but they were so I don't want to say spoiled, but when you had Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer in their primes from 2017 for quite a few years, you never worried about that position. There is a little bit of worry there. For Bills fans there, DeMar Hamlin's depth role. Jordan Hancock's a guy with a lot of promise that they drafted this year out of Ohio State. A lot of versatility to his game where they said he could play nickel corner, outside corner, or safety, but he really seemed to settle in nicely at safety over the summer preseason. So they have some guys there. That is one area, though, where I wouldn't be surprised if Miami tries to attack the safeties in this game. And then at cornerback, Trey White, had a really nice summer. He was healthy all offseason, was able to kind of prep for that, which really helps out. And now you saw him come back in week 2. He missed the opener. He was tackling very well. He flew into the backfield for a 5-yard loss on Breece Hall in that game. He had a tackle near the sidelines on a Justin Fields scramble that set up, I believe it was their field goal attempt where they weren't able to stay on the field late in the first half to try to score a touchdown. So he made some nice plays in that game. They had Dorian Strong, a day 3 pick start in week 1 against Baltimore. And really, you never heard his name called -1 holding penalty that I didn't think was really a holding penalty. I thought Zay Flowers really sold it. So to have a rookie in that matchup hold his own was promising. And, they're just waiting for Max Harrison to be healthy and ready to go because they're very excited about the speed element that he brings to that secondary.
Speaking of secondary, we picked up one of your old friends, Rasul Douglas. You spent time around him. Tell us about Rasul. How much does he have left in the tank here? And kind of your thoughts on Rasul Douglas.
Yeah, so when Rasul Douglas came over, a few years ago at the trade deadline, it was funny. He ended up leading the Bills in interceptions that season, despite not being there for very long. And at the end of the season, he credited Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. He said, those are guys that I leaned on when I didn't know something. They kind of told me where to be or what to do on those plays. And it kind of allowed him to just use his instincts and make some big plays. Last year, he looked a step slower. He didn't have any interceptions. He didn't have as many pass breakups. He was kind of picked on at the cornerback position for Buffalo, and it was concerning. And when the Bills didn't even make an attempt to sign him in free agency, that told me all I needed to know in terms of their thoughts on it. Because you mentioned they brought back Trey White, who has had 2 serious lower body injuries. He didn't look good with the Rams last year. He looked better with Baltimore once he landed there. Dane Jackson, who didn't even make this roster. So it's not like they went out and they were signing clear upgrades. They just felt like Rasul maybe didn't have much left in the tank. And, I can't speak to how he's looked through the first 2 games in Miami. I liked him a lot in the locker room as a person. So I hope he has a nice season, but it felt like his time in Buffalo ended for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, he's been nobody's had her. I think he fits actually. I don't think Weaver has the personnel to run the defense. I haven't been a big fan of what Weaver's done, but I don't know. I'm not sure if he has the personnel. I think Rasul kind of might actually fit with even more than a Jack Jones. Jason, I saw that look on your face. None of the corners. Quick, let me ask you. If I said, give me an X factor for this game, for both sides, an X factor player, somebody maybe we're not talking about, if makes an impact. Buffalo. We'll go with Buffalo.
All right, I'll go Terrell Bernard at the linebacker position. Yes. He's obviously very savvy, very smart, has a nose for the ball. You can blitz with him, which obviously he's effective in that role too. But I feel like he's going to sit in spots where maybe it takes away the first read from Tua, could lead to some big plays. Always seems to come up with a fumble recovery or some kind of big play in a meaningful game. So that would be my X factor for Buffalo's defense. Offensively, I'm going to keep going to Dalton Kincaid in terms of maybe someone we don't talk about enough. I really do think the Bills want to utilize him more as a pass catcher. Last year dealt with a pretty serious injury, played through it, didn't look right though. I think there's going to be some opportunities for him in this game in that intermediate part of the field to make plays against the secondary.
Do you think they're going to do like Tua said today, that he notices guys really, really pack in the middle of the field? You think that's going to be the plan, that kind of zone coverage, or you think they'll play more man, or they're going to try to take away that first read in the middle of the field?
Yeah, Bills have mixed it up a little bit more than people give them credit for with the man in the zone. Yeah.
And they're like in the middle of both, actually.
Yeah, so I think you're going to see more of the same in terms of a nice mix. But when they're in zone, pack it in, try to take away that part of the field, really force them to use the boundaries. That has been a little bit of a weakness for Tua in terms of getting it to the boundary guys along the sidelines. It's a more difficult level of throws, and he certainly has the arm for it, but the bread and butter is over the middle a lot of the time. So if they can take that away, it certainly helps.
Yeah. And as for the Dolphins, you have an X factor, or should we be giving you the X factor on that? I'll give you one. I think it's Malik Washington. To me,
he's been really good. We were talking about him on our show today.
You got anything?
I got a fun one from the same position group. I'd like to see more of Nick Westbrook-Ikine. He's gotten 3 receptions so far this year, and they've all been either a nice catch, tough yardage, but it's taken them until the fourth quarter to get him involved. So with his size, his big play yardage ability, and also with the red zone capabilities, I wouldn't be shocked if he surprises everyone, has fantasy managers throw away their rosters with a first touchdown or maybe even a couple of catches. So that will be my XX factor.
I like both. He was really good in Tennessee when given opportunities. Malik Washington just keeps getting better and better. One thing I'll say, McDermott has done a nice job of, since Miami's acquired Tyreek Hill, is kind of phasing him out of the game. He's never really had that big, massive game against Buffalo consistently. Waddle's had some nice games. So this isn't a matchup where further down the depth chart, those guys can certainly do some damage. If I were to go with an X factor, I would go with Chop Robinson. Yes. While the Bills have a great offensive line, if you make Allen uncomfortable, make him roll out, maybe that forces some throwaways. Obviously, if you make Allen roll, though, he can hurt you with his legs. But you have to get after Allen, and Robinson is a guy that I love quite a bit. I think he has superstar potential.
Yeah, Robinson, to me, I said this. He has been disappointing these first few games. He had a sack, but he really struggles. They run at him. I'm sure Buffalo's plan is to run at him when he's on the field. There's no secret to that. But he just, I think he has the most. I agree with your point. I think he has the most potential on this roster. If everything works out, his ceiling is,
huge.
It's huge. It's double digits, consistent, sack kind of guy, for me. So yeah, but I love year 2, the Chop Robinson one. And if you were to say biggest keys to the game for Buffalo, I know like you say, okay, here are the 3 keys for Buffalo to make sure they win it. Is it simple things we talked about? Well, what would you be your 3 keys you'd highlight?
I mean, top of the list would be limit turnovers, win the turnover battle. The Bills have been on the right side of the turnover battle pretty much both games this season, and then obviously last year too. They lived on turnovers. It was a big reason why they were able to have such success. The defense was always bend not break, and then they would get these turnovers out of the blue. So win the turnover battle. That's the first thing. 2, obviously, take away that first read for Tua, make life uncomfortable for him. And then 3, it's just, let this offense continue to go with the everyone eats mentality, be balanced. As much as, we talked about the weaknesses of the secondary in Miami, the Bills can't come out here with a game plan where you want Allen throwing it 40 plus times. Let James Cook do what he does best. He has been highly effective the last 2 years. Stay balanced, keep Miami on their heels.
Yeah, great. I couldn't agree more. If I were to say finish this blank, Dolphins pull an upset if blank happens.
They win the turnover battle. If they can create turnovers, that is what it's going to take to defeat the Bills. And, Josh Allen has been very upfront about trying to be more protective with the football the last few years. He still puts some passes in danger. He had some luck last year on balls that fell innocently, and it can still happen, but that's just it. You win the turnover battle on Thursday Night Football against Buffalo, and Miami can surprise.
Yeah, shout out to my bro, Clown Prince. On a tangent here, but one of my favorite football commercials is J.P. Lossman saying the reincarnation of Kenny Stabler. He mentioned who's the other quarterback he made? J.P. Lossman and I can't remember.
Rob Johnson?
Yeah. Johnson, yeah. I mean,
that was back in my heyday in Buffalo, Western New York.
They had some short stint guys. They had Brian Brom, Jeff Toole, Thad Lewis, who had a win over the Dolphins.
You found the answer. We're still looking.
One of the biggest news events ever in Buffalo when I was there was Drew Bledsoe's coming. So that was a fun little year or so.
Man, they had a year where they were outstanding on offense, like in terms of statistics, outstanding on offense, defense, but then they dropped that final game against Pittsburgh's backups and it kept them out of the playoffs. That was a team that really was fun to watch. They just couldn't they got in a hole early in that season and could never climb out of it.
What do you think the short week favors? And both the same, or you think it's advantage for any of the 2 teams?
I don't know if it favors anyone. Like I said, it really does hinder your game planning, what you can do, because you're also dealing with injuries that occurred in week 2 that throw a wrinkle in maybe something you wanted to do. I don't think it necessarily favors anyone, but it usually leads to a more sloppy product.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to ask this one to Jason. We didn't talk about if the Dolphins win, Jason, what's the headline? Give me the headline. Give me the Dolphins Wire headline.
Dolphins shocked the world, man. I mean, come on here. That's not my headline.
Or mine is Josh Allen was late to the game. Brian, if they win? What's the Buffalo headline?
Ooh, Buffalo
Shock
headline.
Face, right?
I don't know, because I was thinking national headline to be something about the hot seat getting colder for McDaniel if he can pull off that upset, because right now it seems like the Sharks are circling for him. And not that they would do it here in week 3, but there would be a longer week for them to try something like that.
I don't know. That was my next question, Ryan.
Yeah.
Before Jason's going to jump in here. Everybody seems to have an opinion on this. You obviously don't cover the Dolphins, but you're aware, you're pretty plugged in what's going on here. If they get blown out on Thursday, do you see a world where you mentioned it's a longer week? We have, Monday night the next week versus the Jets. It's a long week. Should or would they or will they make a coaching change maybe to Anthony Weaver?
Should they? Probably not, because, again, it's not likely if they go 0-3 for them to make the playoffs, but stranger things have happened. But the counterpoint to that is I do wonder if he's lost a little bit of the locker room. Now, I saw Chop Robinson had a good quote about it's more on us. He's putting us in these positions to do well. We're just not executing. But you watch some of the post-game pressers, and McDaniel talks about opportunities should have been there, but the execution hasn't been right on offense. Is the message still resonating and getting through? I can't speak to that because I haven't seen enough of it. You guys might be able to say no one's kind of given up on him yet. But those, some of the late season collapses in his coaching tenure where they just haven't been able to win in these cold games, these other elements, it certainly worries you. I don't know if they would or should, but if it's a blowout, it's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, I think it's a real possibility. To me, Ryan, listening to his press conference, it's hard to listen to.
The quote after the game, like you win the game to win the game, not to lose, whatever it was, lose the game. It's just like the man sounded so defeated in that moment. It's like, I'm not even going to try to put together a coherent sentence.
He looked like
that was the Billy Madison. What you just said.
Yes. Yeah.
If Jason doesn't get a movie reference every week, I'll be disappointed. Good job. I was waiting for it, Jason.
Every week, baby. Every week.
My brother also loves your movie. He says he doesn't. He says I don't catch him, but he catches him always. Yeah.
That's a lot about my personal life.
Yeah. He really. I know there was a banner over the stadium last game. Fire Greer, fire McDaniel. I don't think. Look, I think it's clear that we're heading for another reset here and a change. I think that's pretty obvious. It's not if, it's just when. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. It's unlike Stephen Ross to do that, but just get the feel of. And Albert Breer came out today with saying the players love Weaver. That's kind of putting it out there to kind of get people prepared, kind of stuff. You know how that works, Ryan, right? Like They don't just put that out there and their articles just to put that out there. Well, Lou, look, if they win, Lou's going streaker in Niagara Falls. So that's one reason. That's one reason for them, or not reason for them to win. But
that's pretty dangerous, Lou. I would not advise that.
We'll send him to the Canadian side on the Falls.
Yeah.
But I just think it's unlike Ross. But when you just get that vibe when things are like, even the media now, they're tougher questions. They kind of smell the blood in the water, especially McDaniel. I wouldn't be surprised. Jason, you said more towards the Chargers game, but if they get blown out, do you think it's a possibility? Let's put a percentage on it.
No percentages. You know that. I hate percentages. But I'm going to circle that Chargers game. If the Dolphins are going into that matchup against Herbert, and Herbert's the one that puts the clamp on it, exactly right.
That's more of a fire Greer game.
I'll rest my case.
That's more of a fire Greer game.
That's a fire everybody
game. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what Greer has done to keep his job for so many 20 plus years. Ross has been loyal to a fault in that case, in my opinion. And don't get me wrong, there's been some really good draft picks along the way, but there's been some bad ones. There's been some bad draft classes. Obviously, the team's not meeting expectations. It's surprising how loyal he has been.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've asked that question. We cover this team day in and day out. Every year that comes around, how has Greer kept his job? We don't know if he has. Jason always like to say he knows where the bodies are buried. Jason.
He knows where the bodies are buried. He knows where the shovels were taken out of. He knows who signed the shovels out. He knows where they bought the shovels, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but I think what's going to happen, Ryan, just to give you a little insight, is I don't think they'll fire him. I think he'll get moved around in the organization somewhere, of like a pseudo promotion, but not really. It's kind of a demotion. But I still think that's the wrong thing to do, because when you're going to hire people, you can't have them worried about, you're not going to get the best guys for that. But yeah, Jason, go ahead.
Time for a score prediction. Let's get the numbers out there. And Ryan will lead with you, and then we'll painfully give our score.
Yeah, I'm going to go Bills 38, Dolphins 20. The Bills have scored over 30 points both games. The secondary worries me in Miami. I know a lot of these games have been very close, and if my prediction is way off and it's another one-score game, I shouldn't be shocked, because these games have gone down to the wire multiple times in the last few years. But this does feel like, the dam is breaking, and this could just get away from Miami after the first 2 weeks and seeing the struggles that they've had on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, we'll use Jason's Vegas vacation reference when they were doing the bubblegum when it went to close the dam.
Beautiful forfeit. But, the Bills will cover. The Bills will cover. I was joking around with our boy, Adrian on the Rainy Day podcast yesterday. I said it was going to be 44,
Shout out to Adrian.
something like that. 40s for the Bills, teens for the Dolphins. Why don't we just make it general like that?
Yeah,
Joe.
I'll go. Yeah, I was my initial one was 31-13. I'm going to give the Dolphins a little bit more. I'll go with 31-17. I just don't see a scenario where it happens. But you made a great point, Ryan. These games are always funky. They're Thursday night. You think this is a question I want to ask you? Are they going to come after Tua? They smell blood early in that game. Like, do you expect them to really try to rattle him, even try to? I mean, not intentionally to get him out of the game, but like they know they're not dumb. They know what happened. They know they can tell the end is near. Would they? Yeah. Do they want to put the fork in it? Like, do they want to put it and end it and give us the final kind of knockout punch?
Perhaps. I don't know if they're necessarily going to be more aggressive, though, just because they have to be really happy with the way the front four has looked through 2 weeks. They don't necessarily need to do that. So if for some reason the front four is struggling, but you mentioned there's some injuries on that offensive line, so I think they're going to have success there. But if that isn't the case, I could see them getting aggressive.
Yeah, I agree. Man, we've been almost.
I got to ask one more question.
Go for it. Go for it.
I got a special question over here. And, shout out to our friends. I know you know them, Lou and Ashley. Yeah. They do such tremendous work in our community for so many different reasons. One of their endeavors has been really doing everything they can to spread the awareness of why Richmond Webb belongs in the Hall of Fame. And to be the best, you got to beat the best. And Bruce Smith, one of the top 2 or 3 best pass rushers of all time, and his numbers were basically cut in half from a per-game basis against Richmond Webb. So I'd love your opinion on Richmond's candidacy. And I don't usually do this, and George could attest to this. I don't ask or request things. But if you are able to whisper in Bruce Smith's ear or get him to maybe endorse this man, because I think it's an absolute travesty that Richmond Webb, one of the best of the 90s, all-decade team, is not yet in Canton. And what are your thoughts there?
No, I agree. He was great. He was unbelievable. He did hold his own against Bruce Smith, who, as you mentioned, was one of the best of all time when it comes to getting after the quarterback. So it speaks for itself. He belongs in that Hall of Fame. I feel for offensive linemen. I think it's tough for them sometimes. It's one of those positions where they don't necessarily get their just due, despite having, multiple Pro Bowls, all pros, stuff like that. All decade type of teams. So he was more than worthy, or is more than worthy, of being in the Hall of Fame. Not to flip the coin, but I feel like a guy like Kent Hall in Buffalo's same time period, he belonged. He was the guy that made the K gun go. Some guys just don't get the recognition they deserve. So I do hope that Richmond Webb eventually does.
Yeah. Jason, why don't we just ask Bruce Smith to come on the show and we can ask him directly? No?
Hey, free Labatt's on me for life in perpetuity, my friend, if you can get Bruce Smith out here.
Yeah, I doubt that's going to happen, but you never know. So, man, Ryan, I can't thank you enough. I didn't plan on keeping you almost an hour here, but you've been tremendous. I can't wait till the day we can go back to those where the Dolphins can get back to that level in these Buffalo Dolphin rivalry games. Even though they're still good games, right?
Right.
They're still, look at the playoff game with who's the quarterback? Skylar Thompson.
Skylar Thompson, yeah.
So even though they're good, let's hope one day we get back. I know, we cover this team. It's not fun covering them. We don't want to be so negative, but it's what we see, and we hope we can get back to that level and have these great Buffalo, Miami rivalries. And thank everybody in the chat. Everybody's got the prediction. Lou, let me run through your predictions. 42-24 Buffalo. Victor, 38-16 Buffalo. Von Joe, 41-17 Buffalo. So even the home base here, it's Buffalo heavy. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Writing on the wall.
And shout out everybody saying great show. Ryan's absolutely awesome. And Ryan, we got to do this again. Let's do it again for the second matchup of the season. We'll have you back on, and anything you need to know from us from down here in Miami, just please feel free to ask. We thank you, everybody in the chat who joined us. Over 100 people on all platforms. Guys, drop those likes, hit that subscribe button, share the broadcast. And Ryan, before we go, where can everybody find your work and find your coverage, and let them know what you got going on?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I do look forward to coming on again. You can find me on social media at Ryan Talbot Bills. You can find my work at Syracuse.com and NYUp.com. You can find Shout, the Buffalo Football Podcast, and all your favorite podcast platforms, but also YouTube. And then we also stream live on Facebook and X.
Yeah, I've heard some good things about that Shout podcast. I got to check it out. Your co-host name is Matt?
Matt Perino.
Yeah, and, it's a short week. We're busy here tomorrow. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., we got WSVN's Josh Mosner in the house to preview the game. So catch us there. And then Thursday, we're live after the game. So it's a busy week here on the Fins Faithful podcast. No sleep, no rest. We're putting the work in, even if the Dolphins are not. All right, guys. For Jason, for Ryan, for myself, Fins up. Everybody have a safe night. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you later. Fins up.